In the previous video, we introduced the ways in which our identity can be impacted by various factors. Global trade is a major influence on our individual and collective identities. What we wear is an expression of ourselves. What do I mean? Well, would you be comfortable wearing these clothes? Some people would say, yeah, that looks so relaxed and comfy, but others would say, it's just really not my style. The styles we choose to wear, and therefore express our identity, are often influenced by the media. But it's more than that. Really popular clothing chains have what we call fast fashion, outfits that take advantage of current trends and then advertise, convincing us we need to buy it. But that means must be made quickly and cheaply, and the best way to do that is to outsource the clothing to factories in countries that don't have the same labor laws we do. This can have a serious impact on the lives of people working in these factories. We're going to look at the pros and cons of outsourcing in a future video. Here's another example of how global trade can impact identity. It used to be a really big deal to travel to another country, and people would bring home souvenirs from their trip. But that puka shell necklace that used to only come from a tropical location can be found at the local mall. I'll even admit it, when I went to China, I didn't buy that many souvenirs because I knew I could get many of the trinkets I saw in China at the markets in our local Chinatown when I got home without having to worry about packing it up in my luggage. There's many more aspects of global trade in our identity that we'll focus on in a future unit. Globalization isn't just the trade of goods, it's also the trade of ideas, and the media is promoting the sharing of ideas at a lightning fast speed. Media, which includes TV, newspapers, and the internet, has an enormous impact on our identity. Media is such an essential part of our lives. How else do we learn about what's happening in our area or around the world? It's through media, whether it be the news or viral videos, and that information can change the world. There's a really cool museum in Washington, D.C. called the Newseum. Okay, maybe it's only a really cool museum to a social studies teacher. But one of the displays in this museum is a wall of all of the front pages of the newspaper on September 11th, 2001. Every country in the world covered the attacks on that day, and there were different perspectives on what had happened. But the point here is that media can bring the world together, but it can also oversimplify issues that could eventually pull us apart. In our society, there's a television in most homes. In your parents' generation, everyone had a much smaller selection of channels to watch, so many of us watched the same show and then would discuss it the next day at school or at work, which unified us. Today, many people watch shows online or binge watch their favorite program at their convenience, which means we have less in common with other people in our community. But the access to programming from around the world is linking us to the global village. So, in a strange way, we're less connected to the people we physically interact with, but more connected to the people we may never meet. There is real ambivalence towards the media and our identity. What's ambivalence? It's when you feel like something's both good and bad. Media can play a great role in encouraging greater diversity. Your generation is so much more tolerant than previous generations. Have your grandparents ever said something shockingly racist, but they don't think there's anything wrong with what they said? In the 70s, it was scandalous to have an interracial couple on TV. It was groundbreaking to promote successful black families. In the 90s, it was groundbreaking to show openly gay characters. The media helps us to become more tolerant. It can also help us to be more accepting of diversity. Here's an example: Sesame Street. There's characters of all kinds of different colors and, well, quite frankly, fabric. From the beginning, Sesame Street has tried to tackle difficult things that kids may face in a way that helps to promote understanding and tolerance. This American show has spread around the world and incorporates the local culture to celebrate both local and global ideas. The introduction of global or digital media to a region can bring information to a people who never had access to it before, allowing them to accomplish so many amazing things. I love the story of William, who grew up in a small village in Africa and had only one book that told him how to generate electricity. But he was able to do it. Later, when he was invited to visit America, he went on Google and was amazed at the amount of information we just have at our fingertips. But when people see the lifestyle of North Americans, they can realize what they don't have living in less developed regions, and their individual and collective identities start to change. People in Vanuatu had their lives changed when the TV show Survivor came to record a season. After the TV crews left, many people wanted material goods they probably didn't even know about before. Someone asked a local chief who was trying to get electricity to his village a poignant question. Do you want your children to learn how to survive on the land as your ancestors did? Or do you want them to become the waiters and maids working in the resorts that you build for foreign tourists to come and provide money for those material goods? He said he'd rather have the resorts, even though those resorts could destroy ecosystems and increase pollution, in addition to destroying the traditional ways of life. Media can also give us the impression that everyone is or wants to be like people in the US. We call this the universalization or homogenization of pop culture. Pop culture is what's popular, and it's strongly influenced by what we see on TV and in movies. but most movies and TV shows are made for a US audience. Looking beyond TV and movies is looking at social media. When was the last time you reposted something from Paraguay? Can you tell me where Paraguay is? Did you know that much of what we search online is biased to a Western audience? For example, when I made these videos in 2016 and Googled happy family, the majority of pictures that came up are of Caucasian families. Does that then send a message that Chinese or African families aren't as happy? Or that they just don't have as much access to the internet and haven't uploaded pictures of their happy families? Statistics show that 90% of emails have been written in English. Can you see how social media is promoting the universalization of culture, whether it intends to or not? But as I stated in a previous video, governments are trying to overcome this with legislation laws and the supportive creation of television stations like APTN and Omni, which can provide a different perspective. As an inquiry activity, find the latest information on the number of social media sites that are primarily in English or come from Western countries. Can you find any trends to help you see whether this is getting better or worse? And what's your perspective on what it actually means to be better or worse? Another concern we have with media is the concentration of media outlets into the hands of just a few individuals, which is going to impact what we're exposed to. When just a small number of companies control almost all of the major networks in the US, that influences the television program. The people at these companies have the ability to decide what we will see or not see. They control our access to information. But then again, something really cool with media is the idea of media convergence, where the media can use a variety of technologies to share a message. For example, when I watch the news, they'll often have an internet link I can go to access more information, or sign up for a poll to express my opinion. This can allow us to share ideas or learn from people around the world. And because of technology, it's easier for someone to create their own programming or information instead of needing to have the millions of dollars you used to need to own your own television studio. So does media encourage diversity or destroy it? Well, it can be both. Media can create a hybridization of cultures. For example, when an American artist takes a sample from an Indian track to make a new song, or an artist in Europe is inspired by a painting from the Group of Seven in Canada that they saw when those paintings were exhibited in Europe. I often say that I'm trying to be Zen in my approach to life. Zen comes from teachings in Asia. And, even as we saw earlier, Sesame Street has taken an American TV program and adapted it to various cultures around the world. There's another issue with media, the digital divide. People living in the West may often forget that our access to technology gives us an advantage that others don't have. While media can influence our identity, it's also part of our everyday life, who we are. Imagine taking a month without any sort of technology. Well, at least you wouldn't have to watch the class videos. But think about what else you'd miss. Or imagine if almost everything on the internet was in Chinese. How would that change your use of social media? There are groups who are taking action to change this, and technology is changing so quickly, it seems like every year there's a new way for people around the world to connect with each other through technology. I love the fact that communication technology allows me to learn so much about the world, but I also have some concerns. Anthropologists point out that when people watch television, they fail to participate in and thus sustain the living cultures around them. Traditional ways of communicating can seem comparatively dull. In pre-television cultures, the transmission of cultural understanding involves cultivating a slow and subtle appreciation of life. There's a distinct risk that generations drawn to the television screen will lose a critical aspect of their cultures. And the more we spread technology around the world, the more we create this concern.